Scientists have discovered a revolutionary new treatment that makes you live longer. It changes your memory and makes you more creative. It keeps you more slim. It lowers your food cravings, protects you from cancer and dementia. It wards off cold and the flu. It lowers your risk of heart attack and strokes. Are you interested? What's up, everybody? So today we're going to be talking about a book by Matthew Walker called Why We Sleep. It's actually a pretty well-known book at this point. I read it about a year ago because sleep has really affected my life over the last 2 years in college. First year, I really couldn't fall asleep very well, and even this past semester, even though I tried everything correctly, I just had a lot of sleep insomnia problems. Someone that prides himself on just studying and training constantly, I know that sleep is just very important. After being awake for about 19 hours, people who were sleep deprived are about as cognitively impaired as people who are considered legally drunk, right? Walker talks about how even the slightest sleep deprivation could significantly impact car accidents, for example. A group that got 4 hours of sleep versus a group that got 8 hours of sleep were studied. The group that got 4 hours of sleep approximately had 6 times more accidents. Car accidents are the leading cause of death in America, and we do look down upon drunk driving, right? But why is that we don't look at sleep deprivation the same way? The body essentially does something called microsleeping for adaptations for sleep deprivation, right? As you're driving or as you're teaching or as you're learning in class, basically without you really even knowing about it, you're falling into small doses of sleep cycles. And this could happen at any time, right? And you can imagine if you're driving, you are randomly falling asleep without you even realizing how dangerous that could actually be. Paradoxical part to this is often called the sleep paradox. Most people, they're so tired, but they don't even realize it because they're so used to it. So they'll report saying, I feel just fine. When in reality, if you measure their toxicity level, alcohol content or whatever, it matches that of someone that's legally drunk. Everyone knows someone, whether it be their relatives or their family or even you yourself, that drives sleep deprived, right? But turns out that has real ethical ramifications. To be a good person, you should be getting good sleep. Otherwise, you're not following the harm principle. The principle is basically that you can do whatever you want with your life as long as you're not harming anyone without their consent. Car accidents caused by sleepiness make up about 1.2 million deaths in the US. We should be addressing that as significantly as something like smoking or drinking or really any type of crime. Aghast at the mental and physical harm caused by sleep deprivation. In the 1980s, Guinness ceased to recognize any attempt at breaking the world record for sleep deprivation. So despite the fact that Guinness World Record allows for like the most insane record-breaking feats, right? From like growing your toenails as long as possible to like jumping up the highest building, like many different things. A lot of uncanny stuff. Guinness World Record considered sleep deprivation so bad that they had to outlaw it. Any attempt at beating the world record that was held previously were all erased from the data books. This was because the Guinness World Records were getting people that were trying to not sleep for like 4 or 5 days. What would end up happening was that they got major hallucinations, permanent brain damage, psychotic behavior, right? Matthew Walker also talks about how sleep deprivation was actually used as a method of torture by many governments. However, even this form of torture was banned as cruel and unusual punishment. Imagine that, like we allowed waterboarding, we allowed electrical chair execution, there's many things that are allowed, right? But sleep deprivation is considered so inhumane that it has been banned. Even despite the fact that we know it's so bad for you to the point where it could be torturous, we still continue to do this. And we really have to ask ourselves, why is it that behavior incentivizes this, right? Most people know it's bad, but they still continue to do it. Like imagine humans voluntarily participating in something like waterboarding, right? That doesn't make any sense. So why is it that we do a similar thing with sleep, right? REM sleep is what stands between rationality and irrationality. Now it's pretty clear, in the book he makes it pretty clear that all stages of sleep are important, right? Like not just REM, despite what we think. So in this part, Walker talks about an experiment done on teenagers during the 1960s. Essentially the participants were selectively deprived of sleep. Every time the sleep waves showed them going to REM, they would be electrocuted, like slightly electrocuted and woken up. The NREM sleep was still kept mostly intact. And this was done to test what does REM actually do, right? So once they were awakened, they were asked to solve math problems. As you might have expected, the results were very poor. These participants were starting to display symptoms that any psychiatrist would describe as severe depression, only after a couple of days. And this was only because they lost REM sleep, right? Imagine if they lost all of the sleep. By the third day, participants were displaying signs of psychosis. They became anxious, moody, and started to hallucinate. They were hearing and seeing things that were not even real. What's even crazier is that Walker describes this as having happened regularly in our school system. 80% of the school system in the US have a very early 8 a.m. wake-up time, right? However, teenagers naturally have a circadian rhythm that's pushed towards the later half of the day. Having an 8 a.m. schedule basically means you usually have to wake up at like 5 or 6. And essentially, according to Walker, teenagers waking up at 5 and 6 is equivalent of an adult having to wake up at like 4 or 3. Right? The sleep paradox still continues to play into adulthood because these teenagers grow up feeling like, oh, they're okay with 6 hours of sleep, or the fact that, or because they've been waking up their whole life at 6 to make the 8 a.m. time. It's unfortunate because now they're following this paradox. It's not even their fault. Society is prescribing it to them without understanding the science behind it. Inadequate sleep costs America and Japan about $411 billion and $138 billion each year, respectively. The UK, Canada, and Germany follow. Studies of 4 companies have shown that inadequate sleep could cost about $54 billion annually. I'm not entirely sure what the content of these studies, and I'm not sure how exactly it was controlled or whatever. All the references are linked in the book. You're welcome to check it out yourself. Added across the country, that roughly amounts to about 2% loss in GDP just because of sleep deprivation. And I also tend to believe it because companies are starting to realize that these data are very real. That means they're literally losing billions of dollars annually that are just free profit, right? Like it just comes from people getting something that's absolutely free. Google has hired Matthew Walker, for example, to just come out and talk, which is a huge thing. It shows that companies know that this is actually a very valid way of maximizing their revenue. This shows that the biggest issue is still remarkably culture, right? One of my idols, Arnold Schwarzenegger, a funny quote he always has, like, I always sleep about 6 hours a day. When everyone else asks him, how do you get that little and be functional? And he goes like, sleep faster. While that is charming and funny, I didn't realize how damaging it actually is to individuals. More importantly, to your country, to your family. Your type of behavior is costing billions of dollars. Another thing sleep is magical for is study and practicing anything from sports to art, right? Through sleep, your brain will continue to improve skills, memories, even in the absence of further practice. It is really quite magical. So in this part of the book, Matthew talks about a piano player who was practicing a piece, but he just can't seem to get it down, even after hours of trying it. However, he sleeps for like 8 hours, and then he wakes up, and somehow magically he could just play it. Matthew did like a whole control study on this. So the study divided people into 2 groups, right? In the morning, we're given a piano piece, and they practiced for like 12 hours, and they were tested at the end of the day how much they improved. The first group, which practiced all throughout the day, improved quite a bit because repetition automatically improves memory and skill. The second group, however, was given that after the 12-hour practice time, they were given an 8-hour sleep window, right? They were given the same sequence, but just because of that 8-hour sleep window, their accuracy rate improved by about 35%. Their speed improved by about 20%. The same amount of practice time, same piece, same everything. All they really did was sleep. Imagine the 35% increase in your test score or your free throw shooting ability. Right? This similar study was also done on athletes, especially Andre Iguodala. For those of you who don't know, well, back when I read this book, he used to be a Warriors player. I'm not quite sure where he is now. Basically, it was the exact same thing, but just testing his athletic ability and free throw shooting accuracy. It had the same exact improvement. Like, I've been an athlete my whole life. Even in high school, like there were times when we had to wake up at like 4 and go to practice. Never realizing that just doing that by itself is probably just making me worse than having to just sleep an extra 2 hours. It's better to sleep if it's just automatically improving your memory anyway. Why not just do that? Well, this shows that sleep is the grind. You're not being lazy by getting the sleep you need. That is your grind.